But
Oh,
anyway, happy Friday. We
happy
are live.
Friday. Yes, and
Yes.
happy New Year.
And happy New Year. Yes. It's wonderful to see you. Like I was just saying, it's been
Yeah.
way too long, but it sounds like you've been super busy, which is great.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
busy. I'm glad to be entering kind of a slower period over the next couple months, I hope. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Fingers crossed. Right.
Yeah.
I know. In some cases, it's really good to be busy. Some cases, it's nice to have, some space to step back and digest, especially in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
But welcome to Unmuted. Happy Friday, everybody. This is our first episode, Jessica, of 2026. So happy. Um, if you're joining us, put in the chat where you're joining from. I always love seeing where folks are joining from. It's a lot of fun. I've had people from all over the world join us. I think we had someone from Nigeria in our last episode. That was really cool. Canada, California, yeah, all over the place. Um, and I just want to say Unmuted is a platform for females that I have met across my journey of social impact work. Jessica is one of those amazing, beautiful people. And we'll get into how awesome she is in just a few minutes. You are. I really
Oh,
so grateful that we met. We can thank
likewise.
Nadira. We can thank
Yes.
Nadira for
Shout out
that.
Nadira.
Oh, that was wonderful. But yeah, so this is a space where female leaders just have a platform for themselves. I've met some really amazing women over the years, and I find there's very limited spaces where you get to engage with folks, and I hate that. Um, People should know about the amazing work you're doing, or Jessica DeVito, who's in the chat. I'm so glad you're joining because she was on here too, and the amazing work she's doing, right? And y'all are doing really different work, helping communities in different ways. And I love that. So this is a space for that. And these are recorded, so folks can catch up if you have to leave another time. The other thing I wanted to just say is that if you're a female leader joining us, we're going to be hosting our first Unmuted Power Lab January 30th. You can sign up. There's a QR code right there in the corner of the screen that's for my newsletter that you'll receive stuff through that, or you can look on LinkedIn. I'll be posting about it intermittently, and you can also always reach out to me. Happy to send you some information, but it's for women. It's a 1 hour curated networking space. I'm really excited about it. It should be a lot of fun and deep. So it's not intended to be a surface level connection that just kind of stays there and leaves there. Hopefully it stays with you and folks can carry it into their other spaces when they leave that space. So let's dive in. How are you, Jessica? Why don't you share with our audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, what makes you so
Sure.
amazing?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I just want to
Yeah.
say the other speakers have done such an amazing job. I hope I do the series justice, but I appreciate the invite. And I already are speaking for the networking event, so I'm excited about
Yay!
that.
Yeah, we have
um,
57 people already registered. So really excited. It'll be a really
nice.
good time. So hopefully more people sign up.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Jessica Elsaesser. I'm a macro social worker. I'm also a poet, which isn't something I usually combine in the same space, but I'm proud to say it here. My work is focused on the importance of quality and sustained relationships for young people primarily, but this is something that I think is hugely important for all of us. Really focusing on work that came out of adverse childhood experiences into positive childhood experiences, right? So not about just reducing risk factors, but improving protective factors so that we all do as well as we can in our lives. I think our current systems are really damaging for those relational networks. So it's something in my personal life I feel very strongly about, in my poetry community I feel really strongly about, and obviously in my professional social practice. I think in addition to that, not even in addition to that, but, there needs to be resource transfer. So I'm really interested in things like direct cash transfers, child savings accounts, but that those are ideally delivered in the context of trusting, supportive relationships. So that's the kind of focus of my professional work, how I met Paige. As far as background on me, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. I moved to New York City in 2003. I'm very much a product of my parents. My mother is a physical therapist turned healthcare researcher. My dad is a poet who does poetry groups with survivors of interpersonal violence. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely influenced my trajectory in both ways. I really think of poetry and social work as, having a more interconnected relationship for me in this later stage of my life, having sort of distal and proximal effects on the world. And I think it's been really helpful for me to think about that and my personal life all kind of intertwining. So during my master's in social work, I really wanted to study the issues that had impacted me and my family and my community. So I was doing abusive partner interventions and substance use counseling. And at the same time, I was working part-time with this youth serving organization, and I was researching prevention. And I looked at this and I was like, oh, these are the things that prevent the people who I'm trying to help manage a crisis from experiencing that crisis. So that's sort of how I ended up in youth services. And I think I'm really experiencing more recently a wonderful expansion of, I think, this sort of more intra-organizational relational work. So having relationships with program staff and relationships with the young people that I mentor, to working in relationships across organizations and trying to build out more partnerships with other youth serving organizations, because we are all very much, I think, working towards very similar goals. So I think there's been a little bit of an expansion there in recent years. And I think finally, where all of that is sort of going for me is my interest in program evaluation. So, really a social work degree is a study in people who have tried to help and maybe sometimes done a lot of harm. So really making sure that we're doing what we think that we're doing, and not just kind of facilitating closing that research to practice gap, but really working to close the practice to research gap as well.
Oh my gosh, it's been way too long since we've talked. I love it. I didn't know that about your parents, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Just really quick, if you're just joining us, hi Fatima, drop in the chat where you're joining from. It's always a lot of fun to see where folks are joining from. Jessica, that is incredible. I know when we met, we got to work on a very fun project that I still think about all the time. It really stuck with me, and your commitment to the team and to the organization and to the young people that ultimately are at the end of the line of that is just incredible, because you could have allocated resources in a different way. You could have chosen to do something different, but you chose to really invest in data and education and training and really helping the team get on the same page. It was just such a beautiful process. And hearing your story and the connectivity between your poetry and that, it makes sense. It's beautiful. I love that. And I really admired your transition when you shared with me kind of from, at the same organization, but in a different space, doing different type of work, and how that translated into the work that you're doing now for the same organization, but in a different way, and it's still impacting young people. It's just really powerful.
Yeah, and I really credit, our leadership team for making that happen. I think it's, I'm at a 45-year organization that works, generationally. We serve students from first grade to first job is the tagline. So I think those kinds of sustained relationships are something I'm a big believer in. Small is good, small is all, really working with a discrete group of people. rather than necessarily focusing as much on the problem, the social problem to solve, but really committing yourself to a group of human beings, in our case, young people and families.
Yeah, it's a really cool model. I know I've shared it with a lot of people. So, well, let's dive into our few questions we have. I've been asking all of the wonderful guests I've had the same 3 questions. It's been really awesome to see like similarities or differences, I love all of that, looking back at the recordings and seeing, um, across the interviews, the different things that folks are dealing with.
Yeah,
So
I'd love to
our
see
first
the word cloud if you ever do it.
I
If you ever do a
should do that.
transcript.
I should totally do that. That's the in thing now, right? The word clouds. Um, that's great. It's always like wonderful to like have that visual. It connects with folks differently, in our minds when you can see that. Hey, Melissa. Hey, Bully. Nice to see you guys. So glad you all are joining. Well, we're just diving into our first question for Jessica. So perfect timing. Our first question is, has there been, or what was the mindset shift for you, that has shaped your leadership today?
This is a great question. I've been mulling it over for quite some time. I feel like I really struggle with the word leadership. I think I have a lot of
Mm,
preconceived notions about what that means. And so I'd say really the mindset shift was really one from sort of individualized to collective. And I'll sort of explain, I guess, what I mean about that. Just that I feel like the way I was raised, that leaders were individuals, that history was made by individuals, that your individual purpose and will were what accomplished things and changed outcomes in the world. So I think, when I was I was in the arts for many years. When I decided to enter social practice, I was deciding between studying to be a licensed mental health counselor or a social worker. And I think that choice really was for me the definition of moving from working primarily with individuals to working within systems and networks
mm,
and communities. So I think that the first time I heard, person and environment or systems theory, that was really what made up my mind, because I think that for me, I have always felt very attuned to other people, to the environment that I'm in, and that form of leadership, of really listening and trying to find consensus and work within my community, doesn't feel like the traditional notion of leadership. So I think
mhm.
that was definitely the mindset shift. I'm even struggling in this conversation to not cite all of the authors and other social workers and people who've informed the things that I'm saying, because there's been
Yeah,
so many of them.
yeah.
I remember when I first started, we launched a cohort at my current organization in Newark, New
Mhm,
Jersey, and I met some people who worked in the school who were not teachers, who were there in a supportive
mhm,
capacity, but they had been there 30 years. They knew the name of every student,
mhm.
their cousins, their parents. They knew everything about them. And I was like, that deep relational knowledge of the community, the network, was something that I felt was a kind of leadership that I really connected to.
Yeah, it's so true. It is so true. We really are socialized to have such very structured and stringent definition of leadership, or what a leader is. Um, I know for me, that was a big thing I had to unlearn, that
Mm.
this we are all leaders in ways that that are us, and whatever that means in that space. And I love that how you were able to see that in the systems work, especially because that's where it's so deep. Um, and I think a lot of folks get left out of those conversations because they're not considered leaders. And those are the folks that really need to be in the spaces of those conversations.
Yeah, I
That's
think it's definitely informed the way I work with others in terms of making
Mhm.
sure that whoever's quiet, who's observational is being given a chance to share their voice and their view, because I
Mhm.
think that those people often are listening in really intentional and thoughtful ways. So yeah,
Yeah.
quiet leaders.
Yeah, quiet leaders. Yeah, and oftentimes leadership is associated with title. And again, we're just socialized in the workforce to think that way. Um,
Yeah,
and
hierarchies for sure.
hierarchies, right, instead of contribution, or knowledge or relationship, things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, there's different measurements of what that is. Yeah, I love that. Okay, our second question. What is a risk that you've taken that changed everything?
Yeah, this one I knew immediately. So this is a little bit
Okay.
easier of a question, because that decision to enter into a social practice was 100% defined by my sister. And this is
Mhm.
a personal topic, but my sister passed away when she was 30 years old, my younger
Mhm.
sister, and it really, I didn't even think about how I was going to answer this question. I was like, I just feel like I'll know how to say it when it happens. But really, I think that experience both opened me up to many different systems operating within hospitals, operating within treatment centers, operating within um, the sort of networks of social support and grief that exist in different communities, from the ones that I was most familiar with in terms of my creative practice and
Mhm.
college and my family and things like that. And it also, I think, opened me up to this commonality of human experience that I don't think I'd really felt in an embodied way before. There were so many things I think that I was very anxious about and concerned with and worried about in terms of how I was being perceived by others,
Mm.
or what I was or was not accomplishing in my life, that her passing really illuminated as not being as important as I thought they were. And that there were all
Yeah.
of these other things that were so much more important, and that I needed to be more brave than I'd ever been in my entire life, and really attempt to make a change in systems that I otherwise felt like I was either powerless to impact,
Mhm.
or that I would be in some way compromised by if I engaged with them. So
Mhm.
really it really brought me into, I guess, trying to make a difference, right? To connect with other people, and to try and build the skills in order to do so. I think another thing about leadership that feels sort of aligned with what we teach kids now in terms of growth mindset and things like that is that you either
Mhm.
have it or you don't. Um,
Mm.
and I think much of that is gendered, right?
Yeah.
That you either that it's an intrinsic trait rather than something that you can build as a skill.
Yeah.
And there's, a lot happening, I think, in recent years with social emotional learning and things like that, that these are
Mhm.
not gifts or talents or intrinsic qualities, but they are skills that can be built, they can be taught, they can be shared and learned. So
Mhm.
that definitely gave me the awareness, I think, to seek out skill
Mm.
building in those areas that were not otherwise very intuitive to me. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was a complete career change at 33 years old, that brought me into a completely different world. And it's one of the things, looking back on it, in terms of, grief having this sort of double-edged quality, right? Where you grieve because you lose something, because you had something, right? That I am
Yes.
both grateful to have been blessed with the life of my sister while she was here, and then that's why I feel grief that I have lost her. That experience, I completely credit her life with changing mine.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. That's powerful. That's legacy there, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that connectedness is something I've spoken to other people who've experienced grief, that connecting with other people who have a shared experience.
mhm.
Um, So it really brought me out to try and find ways that I connected with all kinds of other people.
Yeah, it really does shift your perspective. Yeah, grief can do incredible things. It's, yeah, the double-edged sword. That's a good way to put that because there are some really beautiful things. I know I've had some really heavy things happen in my life too. Then um, incredible. I like to liken it to a diamond almost. That diamonds are created under great pressure, and it's like, look at this beautiful work that you're now doing, but it didn't start maybe so beautiful, didn't feel so good maybe through the processor at first. But then on the other side, there is some beauty to behold, there in that space. I think about that stuff a lot with some of the grief in my life, and you're right, there are ways, and when you do connect with others that have similar experiences, um, yeah, there's it's almost like these interesting sparks that fly, of connectivity, with, I mean, whatever the experience is, that that other person can directly relate to. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I
yeah.
think that's another preconception about leadership, right? That it entails confidence, and not vulnerability,
Mm,
right? And I think
mm,
that vulnerability is one of those things that when you talk about your experiences and you open up to other people, I mean, I've had people tell
yeah.
me amazing stories because I started talking about it first.
Yes.
And that's something, I have to keep an eye on too in terms of um, being showing discretion in vulnerability,
Mhm.
but that I
Mhm.
don't necessarily see it as um, a quality that requires correction or strengthening
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
changing. Yeah.
Vulnerability, huge. I mean, there's been so much written about that in recent years. It's wonderful that finally, people are leaning into that and accepting that and seeing the value. Yeah, we could go on and on about that. The studies are
And I'll
showing.
send my citations over later. Yeah.
I know, please do. But I'm sure folks would be interested. I had one guest that she was rattling off all these books. She was like,
Oh
"Oh,
my
and this
gosh.
book, and that book, and this book." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to write this down. I'm gonna have to go back and look at the recording." But it's great. So if you do have references,
Yeah,
share.
yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
yeah, because I think folks are really interested in stuff, and it's applicable. It's applicable, often to ourselves as individuals, as people, and then to the work that we're doing. So yeah, please do
Yeah,
share.
great.
Okay, our last question. What is something that you've chosen to unlearn about leadership? We've talked a little bit about that, but yeah, is there anything else?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I talked too much about it already. I think whatever the newest iteration of how we define leadership, right? And leadership types or styles or all of these different things, right? I feel like there's always some kind of focus on behaviors to adopt. And
Mm,
I think for me, that's less important than deeply connecting with my values when it comes to
mm,
whatever it is that I'm talking about, right? Because I think that when you come from a place of shared values, when you're working with other people, that there's greater trust, that there's greater relationship, and that people are more likely to believe what it is that you say because they understand where you're coming from, they understand what your motivations are. So I think being really transparent about those with myself and with others is definitely a form of leadership that is not what I was taught to do. I think there's, in terms of things like imposter syndrome or
mm,
social anxiety, that there are things that we try and train out, that we try and remove one set of behaviors and bring in another set of behaviors. And I think for me, right, things like imposter syndrome are often shared by people who have a deep sense of humility about what they know and what they don't know, who have a scope
right.
of understanding of all of the realms of experience and things there are to learn and know. And I think that that's maybe not necessarily a deficit. It's maybe something to think about and understand, especially when there are systemic injustices that make you feel like you don't belong in a certain space. But that it can also reflect that belief in being a lifelong learner, right?
Mm-hmm.
That people with social anxiety need to learn to be less socially anxious, when I think people with social anxiety can be reflecting a awareness of the interconnectedness of relationships. They can be reflecting an understanding or a value for how delicate those networks are, for their perception of people's reactions and feelings. That it's, again, not necessarily a deficit. It's something that can be reflecting awareness that they may have. So I think, I think unlearning, needing to change yourself to be a leader, I think is
All those
the lesson.
shoulds.
All
You
those
should,
shoulds.
right? You
Yeah.
should be. You should have.
Oh, especially this time of year, it's the
Yeah.
messaging from every corner of our media landscape is how
Yeah.
to change yourself. So yeah, I think it's more about integration and connection internally. When I talk about relationships, I'm focused professionally on relationships with others, right? But the other things I feel like our systems have damaged is our relationships with nature, our relationships with ourselves
Yeah.
and our bodies. So,
Yeah.
learning to notice when I feel a certain sensation and really, dig into that, I think, rather than trying to project a specific version of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the reframing, you've just reframed all of these negative things or all of these things we should be doing into all of these positives. I love that so much. And that also is a total mindset shift when people are, yeah, Jessica, stop shutting yourself. I mean, it's so real. We do it, it's that internal dialogue. We're doing it to ourselves. We're seeing it from everything that's coming in.
Mhm.
I love
Well,
that.
yeah. We also want it. So, and that, right? So, shoulding is also, we're trying to improve. We're trying to
Yeah,
find ways to be better people for
right.
ourselves, better people for relationships. Like, even
Yep.
let's not should ourselves about shoulding ourselves.
We're just trying to be better. Yeah, I love that though. I've been working
Just
on that.
grace.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
grace, right?
Giving
For
ourselves
yourself
grace.
and for others.
Yes.
Yeah, I talk with leaders about this a lot because folks get frustrated with their teams, right? And they should be doing this. And I think they should be doing that. And when you start to bring in these types of thoughts of, do they feel fully supported? Have you communicated clearly? Is there trust between you and this person? Have you been transparent about their budget or what, and when you start to dig
Exactly.
into some of those questions about humanity, about, just person, have you talked to them yet? Have you said
Yeah.
anything, it's
Yeah.
amazing how, like, I think because of that whole leadership narrative of what we should be doing or what leadership is in the box that we think we need to be fitting into prevents us from being almost humans ourselves,
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's beautiful. I love this as our first episode in 2026. This is good.
Yeah, that's a good.
And we didn't even talk about all of the data stuff. So I'll just say for folks listening, Jessica is like an incredible, like, you hear her speaking, you hear how she thinks, and imagine that she does data and evaluation work. It's just a beautiful, beautiful combination that is rare. So, I would just say, like, check her out. She's doing a lot of great things with I Have a Dream Foundation. So that's the organization that you're at, and you guys are doing incredible things across the globe. So just really grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Paige. Speaking of relationships, I'm so glad that we met and to be part of this community of practice that you've got here. So
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you bringing everyone together.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited for the 30th. It's just going to be an evolution of this space. So I'm just so excited to bring all of you amazing women together in one place. I wish it could be in person, but maybe one day. Anyway, yeah, I know, right? We can always plan. Thank you for joining us. We're going to close out here. Have a beautiful Friday afternoon and a beautiful weekend, and join us again in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.